Hello, world. Welcome to Friday. Friday the 13th, today's going to be a spooky but not so conspiratorial focused CDO Matters live podcast. It's not going to be scary. It's not going to be Friday the 13th-ish. I didn't even realize it was Friday the 13th until earlier today. Not that I put much weight in any of that stuff, because I really don't, but it's just coincidentally, it's Friday the 13th. Happy Friday the 13th. Happy Friday. Woo! It's Friday. I'm stoked. I have surprisingly a decent amount of energy, but you may be able to hear, and the reason why is because I've been at the Gartner Data and Analytics Summit all week, and I'm pooped. And my voice, you may actually be able to hear it in my voice. It sounds like I've been chain smoking for several days straight, and I haven't. I've been at the Gartner Summit where, per usual, I spend most of my time at the Profisee booth, talking to data professionals, talking to CDOs, talking to people about what's working and what's not working, talking about MDM-related challenges and data quality-related challenges. So that's why my voice sounds a little raspy, shall we say. I'm raspy. I'm feeling raspy. But let's give folks a minute to join. Where's everybody joining from? I don't see anybody in the chat. I don't see anybody in the Q&A, which is cool, but it makes me feel a little bit lonely. Hey, say something in the chat. I'm going to say something in the chat. Oh, right on. Okay, there's everybody. Okay, people are starting to stream in. Okay, I'm not alone. It would be okay if I was alone. I do pretty well alone, but good to see everybody. Hey, Greg Greg Holland in the UK. Good to see you, Greg. Erica in the Commonwealth of Massachusetts. Fun fact, there are 3 states in the United States that are technically not states. They're commonwealths. Massachusetts is one of them. Hello. Ashley from Eau Claire. I've not actually ever been to Eau Claire. I've been very, very close. Gabrielle from New Jersey. Rohit, hello. Curtis from St. Louis. Jeff from North Alabama. I assume Huntsville? Probably right. That's North Alabama. I assume as much, Jeff. I was in Birmingham about a month ago. I didn't get to Huntsville, but I need to get up there sometime soon. Michael joining from the Windy City. Hey, Jeff from Tampa. Hello. I'm directly across the peninsula from you in Melbourne. Paul from Rotterdam. Good to see you, Paul. Hey, Chris, Windy City. Rohit, welcome from India. My gosh, it must be late. Sydney from Ankeny, Iowa. All right. Des Moines. Hey, 2 Iowa folks. One of my buddies, Mr. Bill Schmarzo, lives in Des Moines, Iowa. There's Libby. 2 Jeff Youngs. Oh, really? Are there really 2 Jeff Youngs today? That's bizarre. Oh, Joyce. Oh, hey, Joyce. Nice to see you. I know. Okay, so Joyce is not Jeff. It's one Jeff Young, but apparently riding one login or one registration. That's cool. Joyce Myers, lovely to see you. Sorry, our paths didn't cross when I was in Birmingham. Bummer. Jurek, hello. Funky. Nice to see you from London. My apologies if I mispronounced your name. The dueling Jeff Youngs. Yeah. Hey, everybody. I'm excited. I'm going to share my key takeaways from Gartner. So yes, most of my time I was actually at our booth. However, I have the distinct privilege of having a full attendee conference pass, which means that I can see all of the presentations. They're all recorded, some of them video, but all of them with audio. And I can watch them after the fact. So that's one good thing about Gartner. And if you pay for that full conference pass, because heaven knows it's over $4,000 for a pass, you get access to all the recorded presentations. In the last 2.5 days, I've watched 22 presentations. So I've seen a lot. I've seen a lot of presentations. So that's my fact base for what you're about to hear today. I did go to a few presentations in person. Of course, I did. I went to about a half a dozen in person, but the rest, north of 20 of them, I attended over the last couple of days. So I've kind of been cramming for this exam, my friends, knowing it was coming. But I really enjoy it. I really enjoy watching all the presentations. I really enjoy learning. I'm a growth mindset. It's my thing. So I'm going to share with you some of my key takeaways based on the presentation content, and then just also kind of the vibe of being there, which I think is a kind of an important piece of this equation. I'm also going to do something a little different. I'm going to share some slides. I'm going to share some slides. I almost never do this. I almost never put together a presentation, but I wanted to put together some content that you could take away. And so if you hit me up as a DM on LinkedIn, I'll send you a PDF version of these slides that I'm about to share today. Spoiler alert, there will be a variation of this slide. I'll put together a more written summary, probably a few pages of text that will go out with my newsletter in the next coming days. It will also be posted to my Substack. However, if you're getting this today, you're getting the sneak peek. You're getting the advanced version. And when it comes to me, I don't do slides very, very well. So there's a lot of text, but you're getting, the sneak peek of what the rest of the world will get via a newsletter. And then a few days later on my Substack. Hey, Martha. Yeah, we're going to talk. I'm glad you were there. Bummed we didn't connect next time. The keynotes were good. But I do have some concerns. And by the way, since you were there, I'd really love your take on this, Martha, when I share some of my key takeaways from the keynote in particular, the Monday morning keynote, like the keynote. Would love to hear your perspective on my perspective, because I'm human. I could be wrong. And I'm also battling some seasonal allergies. Which I suspect many people are because it's springtime. And so you may hear me sniffling too. Okay, awesome. Thank you, Martha. Keep me honest. Let's figure out how I can share my screen. And hopefully I don't share one of the 8 billion browser windows that I have open, because that's just how I roll. Let's see. Drum roll. Drum roll. Oh. Hey, that looks like I'm sharing. And by the way, my friends, I've got like 8 windows open right now. Well, not 3 primarily. But if you're on LinkedIn, welcome. Thank you for joining. I have my LinkedIn window minimized, partially because of my growing ADD in my advanced age. I find it really, really hard to have a compelling conversation with you and keeping track of stuff on LinkedIn. So if you're on LinkedIn, hello, maybe Andrea, you found a way to join on LinkedIn. I hope you really did. And if I don't respond to you on LinkedIn right now, I will later this afternoon or tomorrow when on Monday when I'm on a plane to Europe. But thank you for joining. Thank you for joining via Goldcast. Thank you for registering, or thank you for joining through LinkedIn directly. And if I'm ignoring you on LinkedIn and I haven't said your name and you're on LinkedIn, please forgive me. It's because I have a limited context window. Let's put this into slideshow and see if something breaks. Yeah, now I don't even see my my window. So yeah, I'm just going with it. We're going with it. I won't see you. I won't see your comments, but I'll try to do my best. Let's get into it. Key takeaways. Gartner. I put this as my top slide. And the reason why I put this at my top slide is because last year I made a post on LinkedIn and it was very lengthy. I didn't have a Substack at the time, and I made a really, really long post. And I'm going to call the balls and strikes, my friends. I'm going to call it like I see it. Last year, Gartner's coverage of a few things, particularly AI, was extremely weak. And I called it out. I just called it out. And some of my Gartner friends took that a little personally. I have many friends at Gartner who I respect dearly and I respect greatly. But I got some feedback that, well, why do all ex-Gartner analysts have to trash on Gartner when they leave Gartner? And I wasn't trashing Gartner. I was just, I think, fairly evaluating what I thought was some weak coverage, particularly around AI. So I wanted to make this slide, the first slide. In the unlikely event there are any Gartner analysts listening to this, I doubt they are, because they're probably neck deep in inquiries right now. But maybe they catch it after the fact, and maybe they read my Substack. I know for a fact Many Gartner analysts follow my content. So if you're one of them, I wanted to say, hey, good job. You're evolving. Last year, the AI content was very, very weak. And I think this year, the AI related content is getting better. I think in part that's because Gartner split its analyst duties. They created like a specific team for AI. So obviously, kind of the DNA leaders group, the IT leaders DNA team is still taking obviously some AI related inquiries, but there's a specific functionary for AI, and that's helped improve the content. AI or Gartner's evolving. It's changed a lot in the last few years since I left in 2022. For example, they added some debates into their conference schedule, which were really good. Two of them that I saw, one with my friend Andrew White on the debate related to AI governance and what is AI governance, and another debate that was titled "Will AI Kill BI?" Those were great debates and good conversations, and they really kind of highlighted some of the issues where we're not actually resolved at all. Right, things are moving so fast, things are changing, and the issue of is AI governance the same as data governance? Is it a different thing? That debate I found was quite compelling. We'll talk about that a little bit more. Gartner's evolving they're including external influencers now. Like when I was there in 2022, the idea that some external third party who has a big following on LinkedIn would show up at the event and actually be part of panels, which is like would never have been considered in 2022, right? But they do that now. So my friends Ravit Jain, Kate Strachnyi, Scott Taylor, all massive influencers on LinkedIn. Kate and Ravit have like north of 200,000 followers, are now being invited to Gartner and being invited into some of these presentations. Clearly, it's a marketing ploy from Gartner, but that's cool. I think that's okay, right? Because it's expanding the audience. For sure, it's expanding the audience, and it's bringing more visibility to what I think is the most important data conference. However, if you're looking for very specific how-to, right? If you are a senior manager of a data and analytics function, a governance function, stewardship function, you're leading a team and you need to solve specific problems about how do I do AI governance? How do I do semantics? How do I do these things? It's not the conference for you. It's just not the conference for you. This is a senior director, depending on the size of your company, this is a senior director and above focused company. This is for people who tend to live in the clouds and who tell other people to go do things. And Gartner knows that, right? So, I don't think this is necessarily a criticism per se, but if you're looking for hands-on, going to roll up sleeves, I'm going to do me some governance, this isn't really the conference for you. Holy cow. I said it before that there was I replied to a thread from Kate Strachnyi. She asked, what are you going to hear next week at Gartner? And I said, what you're going to hear over and over and over again is context, context, context. And boy, was I right. I was so right. It's all I heard. Literally, it is the new context is the new buzzword. Context and semantics. Semantics is the meaning of things, and context is akin to meaning. So I think these are largely synonyms. We could get into this. We could get into a pithy debate whether I'm accurate on that or not. But context was everywhere. Semantic layers, literally in multiple presentations where the words came up on the screen. And I posted about this yesterday, where semantic layers are non-negotiable. You must have a semantic layer. Okay. So yay, that's great. I've been talking about this stuff literally for years. If you follow me, I've been talking about this for actually decades, because MDM is the OG semantic layer, right? MDM is about establishing shared meaning across the organization. What does a customer mean? What does a product mean? What does an asset mean? Meaning equals semantics. MDMs have been doing this stuff a long time. I've been talking about this stuff a long time. Others I know have been talking about it a long time. So that's good, right? Less of a focus, I would argue, on active metadata. I think the concept of active metadata was valid, but it just didn't land because it was a little too technical. Something that Gartner had been talking about for a while, but gave up, I think, a little bit on this year and kind of shifted from active metadata and embraced just kind of context more loosely. But yes, we all know that metadata is critical for context. So these things go hand in hand. I don't think you can do context at scale without also doing metadata. The thing that really perplexed me, and this is something also I've been talking about, and something I will continue to talk about, and I think that you will eventually see reflected in Gartner analyst coverage. I have the freedom of being a little in front of the market to some degree, and I think you will end up seeing this. There was no focus at all on knowledge, what I call knowledge management, right? Like companies and people have been doing knowledge management for a long time. As long as we've had SharePoint servers, as long as we've had content management systems, learning management systems, knowledge management systems, document management systems, for heaven's sakes, all of those things, pardon me, align to the world of knowledge management. And we've had people doing it for a long time. It's a very specific discipline, knowledge management. And if we're serious about semantics, right? And if we're serious about the world of meaning and how to classify things, right? The world of meaning, aka semantics, and the world of measurement, aka BI, these worlds need to come together, right? And that was said over and over. Well, the world of meaning is important now, was what Gartner was saying. It's all about meaning. It's important. It's important. But we've got a discipline out there called knowledge management, and we need to bring that into the fold. We need to bring the knowledge management discipline. And it's people doing search. It's people doing decision trees within your customer service organization. That it's people managing, libraries of product images. Those people doing all of that work, they need to be brought into the data and analytics fold. And they most certainly need to be brought into the governance fold, right? And I didn't hear any of that. One person was talking about it, my friend Andrew White, during his debate about AI governance. He was talking high level about that. And I will give a shout out as well to analyst Nina Schoel. She said something to that effect, kind of in her discussion about unstructured data. And good news, more attention on unstructured data. Hip, hip, hooray. We got to bring unstructured data into the fold. That's 70 to 90% of data that Gartner says is enterprise data, 70 to 90% of it is unstructured. We need to bring that into the fold, right? If we're serious about semantics, if we're serious about unlocking the value in all that unstructured data, it must be brought into our governance programs. This is not a negotiable anymore. It must be done. Sadly, or not sadly, I mean, it's to be expected. Something I heard over and over again. I heard it multiple times at one breakfast table. Was, what's a semantic layer? And frankly, we don't have a single definition, right? Gartner says 44% of companies have deployed one, but really, no. Well, okay, I should say this. If you're using semantic capabilities within Power BI, which you kind of have to do, you have to define your semantics in Power BI. Is that a semantic layer? Have you deployed a freestanding semantic layer technology? Have 44% of companies really done that? Like a freestanding, like an Atlan or others that are, Denodo. Denodo's one, see previous versions. The CDO Matters podcast interviewed the CTO of Denodo, Alberto Pan, super smart guy. Have 44% of companies implemented a Denodo or something like a Denodo? No way. Maybe 10? No. So the intent of the semantic layer, I would argue, what Gartner is calling a semantic layer, there's no way 44% of companies have implemented one of those. It just isn't. I'm not buying that stat. Coming soon, my friends. This will be the job title for 2026, probably 2027, but it's coming. I heard it. The context engineer. And if there's any of my friends out there who come from the knowledge management world, and if you come from that, and maybe like the library science world, your heads are probably exploding right now. You're probably saying, "Oh my God, please no, another title, context engineer. We're slapping engineer after something again." For all of the ontologists, right? All the taxonomists out there who've been doing this stuff for decades. And we're going to slap a new IT title on it called the context engineer. Yeah, it's coming. So gird thyself. It's coming. If that makes you want to throw up in your mouth, I understand. It's coming. So as awesome as all of this is, just so many of the presentations focus on technology. It's like okay, we need to do a better job of managing the world of meaning, how things relate to each other. How do I define something, right? Customer in the context of what? Customer in the context of a product interaction, customer in the context of a complaint, customer in the context of right? Like we need to do a better job of all that. Hooray. And the answer with presentation after presentation after presentation was go buy some technology. Yeah, go buy some MDM even. I'll help you if you really want to, but like, good grief. The answer is not always go buy some technology. This is what irked me about no focus on knowledge management, no focus on any of the disciplines related to creating taxonomies, creating control vocabularies, creating business glossaries, creating ontologies, knowledge graphs, like the discipline sitting underneath it, which I would call knowledge management. No focus on that. Just drive me nuts. I should have some coffee. I need to calm down. The stuff gets me excited though. Hey, top trend number, what are we on? 2, 3, I didn't put any numbers on these. AI governance remains a mystery, wrapped in a riddle, wrapped in an enigma. Depends on who you ask, right? We haven't figured this out at all. And it actually was kind of refreshing that Gartner seemed to acknowledge that. They seemed to kind of acknowledge it. Instead of saying, here's what AI governance is, and there were plenty of presentations that said that, but half of them said it was one thing and another half said it was another thing. And this is what I mean by this schism. Half of the presentations defined AI governance as a top-down undertaking, where in essence, if the model behaves appropriately, right, then the model and anything sitting underneath it, including the data that it's consuming, is compliant. It aligns to our governance policy. So half of the people kind of took this top down. If the model behaves correctly, well, then whatever is in the data, obviously things are working, right? Then another half of the presentations talked about this bottoms up approach to AI governance that kind of aligned to the idea of AI readiness. Where I saw in one presentation this spreadsheet that had on the left-hand side about 30 attributes, 30 attributes of that you need to manage, right? Kind of governance criteria you need to manage, like ethics, bias. Look at 30 of those things on the left-hand side and across 4 different use cases on the top. So like this grid of 120 checkboxes you need to make at a given object, given field, given API, given whatever, I don't know, but like, holy cow. So like, there's a whole bunch of people out there and a number of Gartner analysts that are saying to get AI ready, you need to check all of these boxes across all of these use cases, across all of these criteria, not unlike, the 6 to X dimensions of data quality. Oh, and by the way, data quality was like one of these 30 attributes of like, so not pragmatic, just not. Who's going to do that? Right? Who, like, really? So I like the top down approach, but at the very least, it was refreshing to see Gartner kind of acknowledge, okay, hey, this is not easy. We haven't really actually figured this out. And that's born in the numbers. 23% of data leaders say they can appropriately govern AI. Yikes, right? 68% are taking a centralized approach to governing AI. That kind of surprised me. So much for the mesh, so much for federated approaches. 68% are centralizing. And that to me says that's a function of the risk. And like, there's way too much risk here. And we can't just let, marketing go manage its own risk or finance go manage its own risk. Kind of makes sense. Look at that. 13% of CDOs feel capable of leading AI governance. Wow. Right? Like, but again, kind of speaks to the moving target here, kind of speaks to the difficulty of executing on some of these things. Zoinks. Then my headline at the bottom is, on the bright side, governance, good old data governance, data quality, MDM, foundational data management stuff, particularly governance, is in the boardroom. It most certainly is in the boardroom. But based on all of these stats, I don't know if that's a good thing or not. I mean, it's a good thing if you're a software vendor, because people are running out and buying software, because that's what Gartner's telling them to do, in essence. Tech. But boy, obviously we got some work to do. Yikes. Speaking of doing the work, And Martha, this is where I'd love your opinion. Oh, maybe no, it's in the next slide. Sorry. But foundations. Gartner doubled, tripled, quadrupled down on this idea of focusing on foundations. And we've been talking about this for years now. I found it a little bit surprising though, right? So last year, the key message was, let's go. Let's go. Let's do this, right? That was basically the key message, right? Like focus on execution, 97% execution, 3% introspection, 3% operation, like 3% analysis. That was basically the message of the keynote last year. This year, it was 30% of everything you do, roughly, is one of three pillars. So I'm extrapolating. It needs to be focused on foundations. Okay, fine. But if we can't even really define what one of our most important foundations is, which is AI governance, I can understand if there's a certain amount of confusion out there, right? Because it's like, go do the foundations. And there's a natural tendency to go and run to what we know, which means towards the status quo, the way we've always done things, right? And I would see this in some of the presentations where presenters would say, hey, AI is breaking everything. Brave new world, right? This is a new world, new paradigm, new things, new. And then what they would present was like, could have been presented 20 years ago. That wasn't always the case, but it was often the case. So, this is some of the ways that Gartner isn't actually evolving. And I get it. Some of these models and some of these frameworks are probably evergreen, right? Like a data and analytics operating model. I argued, I think you'd have to change that, but they're so high level. Some of these things are evergreen, but still, I think there was much too much focus on status quo, right? And around what I'm calling legacy mindsets. I still saw presentations around data literacy. Yes, training is important. Yes, training is important. But the odd thing about the presentation around data literacy that I saw was like the presenter actually acknowledged that calling people stupid probably isn't a good idea, right? And that we need to find other ways to manipulate people into getting training. In essence, that was the message, right? It was, we need to get people out. We can't call them stupid, but get them to the point where they acknowledge that they are. That's what the presenter basically said. And I'm like, oh my gosh, right? Training is important, but hey, can we focus on some fundamentals here? Can we focus on building great products? Can we focus on keeping our customers happy? Can we focus on governance becoming a business enabler, not a control function? All those things. There's this tension. There's this tension between the status quo, these evergreen frameworks, legacy mindsets like data literacy, garbage in, garbage out, and the need for speed. We'll talk about that in the next slide. And I think far too often there's this kind of natural tendency to kind of veer towards the status quo. And it's shown in the data. 57% of data leaders say they're not ready. Yikes. You got to be ready, my friends. You just got to dive into the pool. You got to do it. One stat that I found interesting, and I don't know whether I was comforted by it or a little bit upset by it, but 40% of AI functions are actually owned outside of data and analytics. Not that big of a surprise. I think I expected that to be around the 20 to 30% range. So this is the data leaders that basically lost accountability for AI, where it's been moved to the CIO or the CTO, or for heaven's sakes, I've even seen it move to the CFO, often as a result of people not moving fast enough. Something that I heard multiple times from multiple people. We're not ready. We need to double down on foundations. We really need to go back to the foundations. And it's not a question of one or the other. You got to do both. You've got to focus on the foundations and you've got to move, right? We just don't, the horse is out of the barn. The keynote used a metaphor of the raft being on the river. We're all on the raft. We got to figure this stuff out. But Martha, here's where I'd like to see your perspectives on this. The morning keynote, it gave me cause for concern. And that's because the keynote said that there's basically three types of companies, right? There are kind of early adopters, right? They are AI opportunistic, right? And then there are AI cautious, right? It's the let's go let's be careful. Let's go, but let's be careful. And I don't know. I'm cautious. I'm afraid. Let's do the minimum needed to check the box. Let's maybe stick half our big toe in the pool, but I'm uncertain and I'm a little cautious. Right, where they said, "Hey, you got to adapt your your AI operating model and your data and analytics operating model to kind of align to where you are." The world isn't that simple. And they kind of painted it through the lens of, well, if your company is AI cautious, then it's okay if you're AI cautious, right? I don't think things are that simple, particularly, and I don't think it's wise either. Particularly if you're 3 out of the 4 CDOs who've been hired to deliver a change mandate, right? So it just doesn't line up. 3/4 of companies are saying they expect their data and analytics function to be the lever of change in their organization. Yet what I heard in the keynote multiple times, and I heard in subsequent presentations, were basically saying, it's okay if you want to move slow. It's okay. You're AI cautious. We understand. It's okay. And I'm not trying to be judgmental. I'm just trying to say that, hey, you're going to fall behind. And you're going to fall exponentially behind. Look at the things that have changed in the last 6 months alone, right? The very next presentation after the keynote, the speaker said in his presentation, he used the stat and said, well, by 2030, it could be problematic if you're still AI cautious. What? Basically saying, take the next 4 years to go figure it all out. Be cautious, move slow, go at your own pace, be comfortable with it all. I'm like screaming, no, we've got to move. 3/4 of our for 3/4 of the companies, it's expected that our organization, data, it's expected that we are out front, that we are the shepherd leading the flock towards the AI pot of gold. 3/4 of the time that's expected. And if 1/3 of you, 40% of you are not out in front because Gartner says it's okay to move slow, I don't think that's wise at all. I don't think it's wise at all. So the speaker in the keynote rightly said, this isn't just about the data and analytics function. This isn't just about the CDO. This is about all of us. We need to be out front, because we need to protect our careers. We need to disrupt ourselves before we are disrupted. We need to embrace AI. We need to be the harbingers within AI, within our peer group, within our team, within our department, within our function. It's relevant at every single level, my friends. And yes, it's okay if you're cautious. Of course it's okay, but you got to work through it. You got to work through it. You got to figure out a way around it, right? Maybe you fell off the horse, maybe you hurt a little bit, but you got to get back on. Because if you don't, we don't have 4 years to wait. That speaker was wrong. We don't have 4 years to wait. We got to move. Here's an interesting one. And I'm glad I'm going at a pretty quick pace, but I'm glad because I want to open it back up to questions after all of this. Me in slide sharing mode has taken away all of my chat windows, all of my everything, and I want to come back to that. So I'm going to blaze through this. And then I want to open it up to chat. So if you have asked me a question or if you've made a comment, I'll come back to it because it's important and I want to interact with y'all, but apparently I'm not very good at technology. Too many windows. How about this? You checking out this slide? AI is not taking your data job. They were very clear about this. And this is something that I would completely trust Gartner around because they do so many surveys. They have so many conversations with CDOs. In a given year, I'd have 700 conversations with CDOs. Okay. So they're having thousands and thousands of conversations. They're sending survey after survey after survey after survey. So I would trust this data. 45% of data and analytics leaders, AKA CDOs or people in CDO type roles, increased their team size, only 8% decreased. Huh? My friends, I think we are in a golden age of data and analytics, and this stat supports that. Will this always be the case as we continue to augment, as we continue to go more agentic? Will that 45% be the same next year and the year after that and the year after that? I think it will. I think it will. Look at the box in the bottom. There's this idea of something called Jevons paradox, right? And a good way to think about this is any major road construction project in your hometown. We'll go from 2 lanes to 3 lanes because the 2-lane highway is like packed, right? Traffic jams, horrible. They add a lane, and within a month or so, it's back to just how it was. That's Jevons paradox in action. And I think that's what we'll see with AI. The more insight and the more value we expose, right, the more demand there will be for this stuff. And what we're seeing is the demand is pretty much insatiable. It's pretty much insatiable, right? Our companies want this because there's value there. As we govern that 70 to 80% or 90% of data, right, that Gartner says is unstructured, 70 to 90% of all data in enterprises is unstructured, today largely ungoverned, largely ignored. If we pull that into the fold, if we start to focus more on knowledge management and content management and document management, if we start to actually really be more adaptive in our governance policies, if we start to show and implement things like causal AI to show that an investment in data is yielding a dollar invested in data is yielding more than $1 in the bank. When we start to do more of these things, there's going to be more and more demand for what we do. So I'm bullish, my friends. I am bullish. I would have no hesitation about pointing any of my kids towards a career in data and analytics for this very reason. Oh, data products. Data products have been a number 2 to AI over the last 2 years at data conferences in terms of the things that people are talking about, and people are still talking about them. I'm happy with this. I'm okay with it. I'm happy with it. I'm bullish on data products, but not necessarily for the reasons you probably think. I believe that data products are necessary in a world where the customers of data are largely robots. Okay. So we need data contracts. We need SLAs. We need these highly atomized chunks of data that can be published in a catalog where they can be governed automatically. Yes, I said that. Governed automatically, where governance policies exist as code, exist as contractual terms within this payload of something known as a data product. Agents are going to need that. So I'm bullish on data products. I'm bullish on the shift left. I wasn't 3 years ago. I was a vociferous critic of the data mesh, partially because of this focus on data products that had nothing to do with customers. It had everything to do with scalability, but it had nothing little to do with customers per se. So what I was bullish on 3 years ago was data product management, and I'm still bullish on data product management. What we need is both. We need data products where the customer is a robot, and we need data products where the customer is a human being. We need both. Scalability at one end, on the other end, happy customer. Okay. I would love to drive a McLaren or a Lambo. Well, actually, no, I wouldn't. I drive a truck. I drive a truck that is increasingly beat up, but I love the idea of maybe driving a Lambo for a little bit. There's nothing scalable about the process of building a Lamborghini or a McLaren, right? So the idea that I could just focus on scalability and that's enough, and that's all I need to do is just scalable. Okay, fine. But there's a whole world of products out there, and there's a whole set of customers who are willing to pay for highly bespoke, highly customized data products that fill their needs, that solve a very specific problem. If you could solve a very, very high value problem, but you only built one of them, it was one dashboard, one time use for one user, but if it drove 2 million in revenue, would you build it? Of course you would. So this idea that it should only be about scalability is the wrong approach. The right approach is scalability and customization where the return on investment justifies it. That is product management. We need both. And unfortunately, what I heard at the Gartner conference was most about the shift left, right? It's mostly about agentic, because agentic, great. We need to keep the robots happy. I'm all for that. But we also need to keep the humans happy. And sometimes we need to have very, very customized solutions based on the use case, based on the ROI. That's product management. So that's my perspective. Near to last. Oh, this is good. We're going to have a good 20 minutes to chat, maybe even, probably closer to 15. One of the key themes, one of the kind of key through lines was this idea of AI first. And I saw this with data first. And I had the same reaction when we were saying data first 5-6 years ago. It's like, oh, not because it's inherently bad, but when has leading with technology ever been a good idea? When? It never has. We know this. When we put technology on a pedestal, when we lead technology with technology, bad things happen. And here we are, Gartner basically saying, okay, your boards are asking for it, your C-suite's asking for it, so give them what they want. Let's go. Let's get some tech. Or whether that's a data catalog, which seemed to be the answer half the time, which drive me nuts. Not that I'm against data catalogs. I'm pro data catalog, right? But that can't be the answer to everything. Oh, want to do semantics? Data catalog, right? Oh, well, you want to augment your data management process? Oh, data catalog, right? Want to have your French toast for breakfast every morning? Data catalog. Yeah, come on. Anyway, sorry. End rant. I like data catalogs. I'm pro data catalogs. My point here, my friends, is that leading with technology, it's never been a good idea. It's never been a good idea. And you had presenter after presenter endorsing this idea of AI first. Forget the use case, forget all these other things, AI first. Now, in Gartner's defense, they have been consistent. I did this every day, sometimes 5-6 times a day. Outcomes, 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 outcomes. So yes, Gartner has always talked about the importance of outcomes. They always have. They've always been trying to push quantification of the value of any data solution, whether that is a data product, whether that is a ETL script, whether that is a dashboard, focus on outcomes, focus on business value. Gartner has always hammered that point. But I think to a certain degree, this is an acknowledgement that, okay, you know what? You probably don't want to fight this if your C-suite is asking for it, and you need to find a way to just make it work and focus on those other things. So I do need to give Gartner a little bit of a break on this. But with such a focus on it, with such a focus on this idea of AI first, it's hard. It would be hard as a data practitioner or a data leader to not just kind of get wound up in all the technology. So 17% report high AI maturity. That doesn't surprise me at all. Here's one, 20% odds of achieving any sort of ROI from an AI initiative, 1 in 5. I have a hard time believing this. I just have a hard time believing this. I mean, I do and I don't. If that includes all the POCs, well, then yeah. So, this data is a little sketchy. Not that I don't believe it, but it's like, okay, wait a minute. Is this of all initiatives, including POCs, or is this post POCs? Is this like once it reaches production, there's only 1 in 5? Because if it reaches production, I would hope the answer would be closer to 80% odds, but I don't know. My point here again is, when has a focus on technology ever been enough? Lastly, now this is mostly about the vibe. Okay, the vibe, particularly the vibe in the vendor hall, right, in the exhibit hall. And these are, I don't know how many conversations I had, 50, probably ish. This is just kind of my vibe. Here's a paradox, and I saw this over and over again. Less urgency than last year around AI. Interesting, no? Less urgency, and certainly way more confusion. What role does the semantic layer play? What's this thing called RAG? I've been told I need some graph. Not even sure what that is. Do you do graph? Like, and on, right? A lot of confusion. I think that's a function of the fact that I believe we're in the trough of disillusionment here, right? And Gartner actually concurs. Just AI in general, we're in the trough of disillusionment, right? Which means there's a lot of hype, there's a lot of swirl, there's a lot of confusion. And I wouldn't blame anybody for being overwhelmed by it all. I wouldn't blame anybody, right? It's like, I need all of these things. I need this 30 by 4 spreadsheet to go and assess my data quality or assess my data readiness, and I don't even know how to measure ethics, right? Like all of this stuff, like overwhelming. And then you go into the vendor floor where you're like, okay, here I am. Yeah, I'm here for my free dessert, but I'm also here for answers. I'm also here for help because, gosh darn it, we need some help, right? Pick a number that I've shown, right? 17% feeling like they're confident around governance, right? 1 in 5 AI, like we need help, right? And I think that's natural, right? I think it's natural for anybody to say we need some help. And maybe you're here because you feel that way. And I hope this is helping you, answer some questions. And then you go into the vendor hall, and what do you see? The same message over and over and over and over again. And every vendor telling you they're basically the silver bullet. Not helping, right? The same messages. It's like trust in data, confidence in your data. And I'm not trying to say these things aren't important. Of course they're important. But this is something I'm gonna challenge, obviously, my employer. I'm gonna challenge all the vendors to try to do a little better here. Try to be more of a consultant. Try to be more helpful. Because if you can be that, then I think people will be more inclined to buy your stuff. Because I'll tell you what, my friends, there is a lot of confusion out there, and vendors are not helping. Right? They're just not helping. And I think that a lot of people are seeing through the swirl. They're seeing through the sales pitches. They're seeing through the market positioning, and what they're seeing is confusion. A lot of confusion. Let's simplify it. Let's focus on value. Let's focus on MVP approaches. Let's focus on agility. Yeah, let's acknowledge our maturity, but at the same time, let's group together and let's figure it out. And I think if vendors take more of that approach, right? Instead of selling you something, I just want to take your hand and help you navigate through this, what appears to be never-ending minefield of hype. You do that as a vendor, you're going to make some money. Whether you're a software vendor or consultant, that's particularly true for my consultant friends. So, all right. Am I still sharing? I'm going to stop sharing. Hi. All right, I'm back. Okay, so now because I can see my entire screen, I can circle back and actually look at your comments and questions. And if you've got some questions, we got 13 minutes, my friends. We've got 13 minutes. Jennifer Bruder, hey, how you doing? Good to see you. You're welcome. What's my top 3 how-to conference from Jeff Young? Or maybe Joyce or Jeff. It's all good. Honestly, guys, I mean, it's really interesting in that if Gartner's at the top, and then there's a kind of this middle zone, and then maybe kind of the bottom zone, and I don't mean that in a judgmental way, because that's certainly not what I'm inferring. The Dataversity events are fantastic, and if you want to go get certified, right, DAMA, DMBOK, CDMP certified at a foundational layer, Dataversity events are fantastic for that. But I do feel like in many ways in the middle of it all, right, somewhere between manager and CDO, I think there's an opportunity there for other conferences to try to step into that, because it's not done very well. I don't think. Dataversity, amazing, fantastic. Go to a Dataversity event. If you want to get certified CDMP, I strongly recommend that you do. As critical as I am of the DMBOK at times, and it's earned, it's still foundational. We need it, right? If you're a photographer, you need to know how processing film works. You need to know the foundations. That is our foundations, the DMBOK. So Dataversity, Jeff, would be a good one. I think Joyce has gone to those multiple times in the past. She can point you there. Martha, you okay? So you agree? Thank you. I'm not. Well, I may be crazy, but on the issue of Gartner kind of validating it's okay to move slow. Yeah. Gerald, data maturity before AI. No, I see it more of a let's grow together situation. Because if you apply a deterministic lens to maturity, you'll never have enough, right? You'll never have enough, right? I certainly don't in life, but I'm still attacking life. Normalcy bias. Yes, Gerald, totally agree. Oh my God, Martha. Okay, my take. This is Martha speaking. And if you don't see this, Martha says my take, and I'm speaking as Martha now, was that Gartner, we're not ready to support going fast, so we need you to slow down. Martha, I actually wrote that in my notes. I wrote that in my note. What I said is Gartner is gaslighting everybody. And maybe that was the wrong term, but I couldn't agree more. I had that sneaking suspicion, which is let's slow the market down. I don't know whether it was conscious or it was intentional. Might be, might not be. I don't know. But it kind of seemed that way. I'm glad, again, I'm not crazy. Gerald, agreeing on the 2 types of data products. Hip hip hooray. Yeah. Colin, good to see you. Talking about adoption of products. Founder's Mentality by Chris Zook and James L. So good book recommendation. We got a book recommendation. The product-driven mindset. Yeah. That's one of the things that kind of irritated me about the data mesh movement was that, it's this you need product thinking. I have been a chief product officer. I have led large product teams. I've been responsible for product P&Ls. I've hired multiple product managers. Some of you may actually be even attending right now. Over the years, I know product management. Product thinking as defined by the mesh is not product management. Product thinking is that let's be scalable, let's do data contracts, let's create this payload, right, of highly atomized data nuggets, which is, again, maybe good for customers who are robots, but product management would say, hey, we need to do it all. All right. So I don't know. I haven't read the book that you're recommending. I definitely need to check it out. But be cautious, my friends. Product thinking, as defined by the data mesh, is only half. I would argue is only half of the equation. The other half is product management. Oh, thank you, Manasia. Gabriel asks, what would you say companies that are successfully advancing their AI initiatives are doing that allows them to keep their momentum without slowing down? Yeah, that's easy. First and foremost, from a mindset perspective, a growth mindset, right? Embrace the unknown, embrace the risk, embrace the possibility that you may be wrong, right? Push forward, do some MVPs, right? Do POCs, right? The idea that, POCs are a failure. POCs are about learning, right? And if you're learning, can you really call it a failure? Yes, 95% failure rate, I think, is problematic. We don't want that many not getting to production. But first and foremost, embrace the unknown and embrace the fact that you're going to stub your toe. Embrace the fact that you're going to make some mistakes. I held a panel at Gartner. So I was the moderator for a panel of 3 amazing CDOs. The CDO of Under Armour, the CDO of Aaron's, they do the furniture rental, and the CDO of Synovus/Pinnacle Bank. All of them said a key to their success was getting the business to buy in and be supportive of the fact that they may break some stuff, right? And having the political capital internally, right, to get the support of their businesses to go forward, right? Even knowing that there may break some stuff, but that they would course correct and that they would adjust and they would get it right. So those are a couple of things, right? Keep things small, take more of an agile approach, more of an MVP, minimum viable product approach, keep things small. Don't have these giant galactic, huge scopes. The MIT study showed us that we need to have the right use case. Another thing that my panel said is pick the right customer. And this is something we heard in Gartner presentations this week as well. If somebody out there doesn't see the value of data or governance or doesn't kind of get it, you can't push anybody to go do MDM or data. You can't push them, right? And in the case of AI, I would say that trying to push people who are uncomfortable, and this is part of what Gartner was getting at when they were talking about AI cautious, you can't push somebody to become an early adopter when they're just not. So find the right customer. That's another key aspect of success here is work with people who want to work with you. Okay, Janine, can you speak more to AI governance? And I feel it should be about tech automation alone. People, data stewards need to govern AI and tools aren't addressing it. No, tools aren't addressing that. I could completely agree. But the foundational shift that I see, Janine, is, and I talked about this earlier, was this idea of kind of a successful outcome shall determine the policies needed, which is very different than the policies determine the data in many ways, right? This bottoms up, right? Where we've set these policies in a vacuum. Our data quality dimensions exist in a vacuum, independent of however the data will be used. All of our dimensions of data governance exist in the analytics class, traditional BI world. I would argue kind of exist independently of however the data is used. If you take the other perspective of if the model delivers, right, the expected outcomes, if it behaves within the guardrails we've established from a behavior perspective of what we want, and it's doing the things that we want, and it's delivering the outcomes we want, well, then by definition, the governance of the data underneath it is sufficient. Another way to say that it's fit for purpose, which is something we've kind of always struggled with. And that is a fundamentally different perspective, right? Doing that type of governance is also very different, because to do that successfully would require what we've historically maybe called DevOps, where governance people need to be involved in the development of these models and the testing of these models and the iterations around all these models, right? Where it is a very test and learn type of approach to what's working, what's not learning, how's it behaving? Is it doing something stupid? Well, then we need to adjust. Maybe we need to extract this data set and use a different data set, but being deeply involved in model production and model creation, instead of just sitting back and saying, here are all the policies that we need in order to enable data quality. It's a very different model. And because Gartner is focused on a C-level audience, they didn't get into the details of the things that I just said. So it's just a totally different way of going about it. Yeah, right on. Colin got CDMP. Good for you. Recommend. Oh, the founder's mentality. Okay, I definitely need to check that out. Oh, you're welcome, Janine. My voice is going. Okay, and my friends, if you're on LinkedIn, again, my apologies for ignoring you today, but I'm technologically challenged. High level, Gartner is still the go-to conference, and I am critical because I want them to improve, right? And like I said, I'm going to call balls and strikes, and if I think that they're, maybe getting a little astray on a few issues, I'm just going to say it because I don't work for them anymore. But I do want them to improve, and the people are super, super smart. Their viewpoints are extremely valid. They can drive entire industries, and sometimes that's for the worst, but most of the time, I think it's for the better. So if you do have a chance to go, I would definitely recommend you going. What are some of the other things in the last 3 minutes that maybe I didn't touch on? I talked about data products. Yeah, this AI ready data, I think that's losing its sheen just because it's so hard to quantify, and it's not deterministic, it's probabilistic. This is why context is so important, right? Because the data quality for one context may be good, but data quality for another, with the exact same data, by the way, may not be. This is one of the reasons why context is so important, because it will allow us to have governance policies that are bespoke for the various uses of the data, but context is sitting in the middle of all this. And we've always known this, right? The data quality expectations of marketing are different than the data quality expectations of finance. They always have been. And anybody who's ever sat in a meeting where you try to convince them around a single definition of customer knows what I'm talking about. They'll never agree, and they don't by design. So that's an example of context in action. What are the governance policies needed for marketing versus what are the governance policies needed for finance? They can coexist, right? But we need to manage both. This is one area where I think that AI can be a huge help to us, because we've struggled with like one version of truth, one set of data quality dimensions. And now what we're talking about is N sets of data quality dimensions, N versions of truth. And to do that, I think the only way that we're going to do it is using AI. All right. So certainly augmentation was another huge topic, right? In the debate of will AI eliminate the need for BI, I kind of fell more on the, yeah, probably, or at least as we know it, right? AI seems to be pretty good, at least the visualization and analysis, right? Not so good at query, not very good at query just yet. I still think we'll need BI to do some of these very, very structured queries at scale. But when it comes to visualization and analysis of data, yeah, that's all AI. Thanks, Jeff. Good to see you. Okay, everybody. I will post a longer version of this probably sometime next week. It is the top of the hour. Happy Friday the 13th. Thank you for coming. We do this every month. Hey, and by the way, if you're not connected with me on LinkedIn, let's connect. What are you waiting for? I do this once a month. Look forward to seeing you next month on our next edition of CDO Matters Live. Happy Friday. Bye.